Nice to see everybody on this rainy Tuesday. My name is Steve Rosenberg. I have the honor of serving as the Chief Operating Officer of the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. I want to thank you all for joining us this morning as we announce the results of our 2019 population study, what we refer to as the community portrait. Before we begin, I want to extend my sincerest thanks to everyone who helped us get to this point, including our committee of volunteer leaders, technical advisors, our agency partners, many of whom are here today, our board of directors, our incredible staff, and most importantly, our two co-chairs for this project, Sarah and Adam Laver, who are standing behind me. Well, two of the people that are standing behind me. You will hear from Adam later on, but their leadership and commitment to this project has been exemplary in every way. The results of the Jewish Federation Community Portrait tell us that our Jewish community is larger than we had thought, but more importantly, it is thriving and diversifying. Using our innovative research model, we're the first Jewish community that has used address-based sampling in a population study. We can now share that Philadelphia is the third largest Jewish community in the United States. There is a lot to celebrate. There is a lot to celebrate, but there is also cause for concern. Our most vulnerable community members, including Holocaust survivors, continue to suffer severe economic hardship. The rise and expansion of anti-Semitism worldwide has had a noticeable impact on the feeling of safety and security in Jewish homes and houses of worship. We will be digging deeper into these numbers very shortly. I know you all have many questions. I ask that you please hold these until our Q&A portion of this program. I promise you that we will answer any and all questions that you have today, and we will continue to do so throughout the next few months as we have town halls and community meetings in your areas. In order to have a strong and secure Jewish community, we need the support of community leaders and government officials. Thank you to all of our special guests who have joined us today for your steadfast support of our Jewish Federation and our Jewish communities. And thank you to our first speaker, Councilman Alan Dahm, who has consistently supported us in both times of joy and times of sorrow. Councilman Dahm has been an active member of the Jeffrey Group, the Jewish Federation Real Estate Affinity, over the past several years, as well as being a staunch supporter of other aspects of Philadelphia's Jewish community. With that, I'd like to invite the councilman to share a few words.
Thank you. I want to thank the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia for inviting me to be part of this important event today. I also want to recognize several individuals joining us, especially the Jewish Federation's board chair, Susanna Adler, along with Adam Laver, former board chair with the Jewish Family and Children's Service of Greater Philadelphia. And additionally, one of my colleagues, I want to recognize State Representative Jared Solomon for being here. And as an elected official, I know firsthand the importance of having studies that provide clear findings and solutions to important issues. So thank you. Having access to the most up-to-date data helps us understand the changing dynamics within a specific community, and the Community Portrait Report issued today does just that. In too many instances, the general perception about a community is derived from what we read, see, and hear through all forms of media, especially online social feeds, although I know all about that from my last campaign. Conversations fueled by hate should never be tolerated, but far too many of us have seen anti-Semitic posts both online and in our neighborhoods. Here in the Philadelphia region, 74% of Jews have reported to have heard anti-Semitic or anti-Israel comments, and 54% reported anti-Semitism in their local communities. More than half of those in our local Jewish communities should not have to experience the same type of stereotypes that have led to violence against Jews and their families. We certainly do not have to look far to point to examples as the December 28th attack in a rabbi's home in Muncie, New York, during Hanukkah, and the October 2018 mass shooting at the Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. We need to educate and in some cases change the perception of how others see and understand our Jewish communities. More importantly, we can utilize good data to help formulate effective policies to improve the lives of everyone within and outside of these communities. Again, I want to thank the Jewish Federation of Philadelphia for having me part of this announcement. I look forward to putting these findings into action as we continue to pursue policies to improve the lives of every Philadelphian. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Dahm. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning, and I know it is a very busy day for you. We're also honored to have with us today State Representative Jared Solomon, a community leader representing Northeast Philadelphia since 2016. Representative Solomon played an active role in helping the community repair Mount Carmel Cemetery after it was vandalized a couple of years ago. Please welcome State Rep. Jared Solomon.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilman Dom. It's great to be with you today and with Federation. Are the 6 people who actually did the study in the audience? No? You guys didn't let them come to the event? So I read a little bit about the study. Over 3 years, it had over 2,000 people fill out a study that takes 21 minutes. I mean, I can't get someone to do a Facebook survey for 30 seconds. That is painstaking work, and I just, even if they're not in the room, I just want to applaud those who did this study. Thank you. When I was growing up in Northeast Philly, it was very different in terms of Jewish life. Does anyone in this audience remember Fleet's Men's Store? Adam, you do. In fact, that's the same. That's his bar mitzvah. We coordinated that. So I went. Fleet's Men's Store was just the place to go. I think everyone in the Philadelphia area, in the 5-county area, went to Fleet's to get their bar mitzvah suit. And I recall that when I went, this was a joyous moment for my family. My bubby took me with my grandfather and my grandmother and my mom. We all went to Fleet's because this was the moment. This was my first suit, and my bubby was going to purchase it. So we get in, and there was this old-timer who had been there forever named Stan. And Stan sees me, my bubby is gleaming, and he says to my bubby, he's a little Zoptic. I think we're gonna have to go to the Husky section. You did too? These are great memories. So, I look though fondly on Fleet's and my memories of Jewish life in the Northeast. Now Fleet's is a stop and go. It is one of my problem businesses in my district. So I can't help but feel nostalgic for some of those memories in Northeast Philadelphia, whether it's Fleet's or the place that I was bar mitzvahed at, which is now a Buddhist temple. Yeah. And now some of these changes, of course, change happens, and a lot of change is very positive, bringing diversity and the great ethnic cuisines in my neighborhood, but I have fond memories of Jewish life back in Northeast. But what I would say, the importance of this work is that what Alan and I need is kind of collecting data. Otherwise, we're flying blind. We don't know how to approach folks, the new Jewish life in Philadelphia, in the 5-county areas, to best represent the 350,000 Jews in our region. So that I can, and we all can, work with, for instance, in the Northeast, Federation, Klein Life, Newark, and others to provide the necessary services that folks need. So this is just critical work in getting the data set that will best inform the work that we do in our communities every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Solomon. Your bubby would be very proud right now. Next, my honor to introduce Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia Board Chair Susanna Lax-Adler. Susanna's outstanding leadership and guidance has helped to make this year's population study a reality. In her role as board chair of the Jewish Federation, she has been a true inspiration to me and so many others. Susanna.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a proud, lifelong Philadelphian. After Jared's great storytelling, I feel compelled to give a little biographical information. I grew up in West Oak Lane, in the city of Philadelphia. My father was a conservative rabbi. He had a shul, a Havat Israel, that some of you may know of. that is now a Baptist church. We moved to Springfield, Montgomery County, where I lived for a number of years. We belonged to Beth Tikva, which I think still exists and has merged with another synagogue. We moved into Center City, Philadelphia, and I lived at 18th and Spruce, and we belonged to Beth Zion and Beth Israel. And in my married life, I moved out to Lower Merion, lived in Bala Cynwyd. I now live in Gladwin. Now we're moving back to Center City. We belong to Edith Israel and Merion, so lots of synagogues, lots of places. I am a product of Jewish day school, public school, and private independent friends school. I think I cover a lot of demographics in this study. I do want to thank Westat, and they are from out of town, which is why a number of the people who actually did this study are not here in the room. I want to give a shout out to Kelly Romorowski from our staff at Federation, who is helping us as a consultant in processing all of this information, and the rest of our staff. And I want to share a few remarks with you. Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia, over 150 years old, is the central hub of Jewish life in our region. Every day, we strive to help every Jewish individual and family and household in each and every step of their Jewish journey. Whether it is Jewish education for a young child, networking opportunities for a young professional, a trip to Israel with Birthright, or Israel 360, or one of our Israel missions, or assisted living for a senior. Our Jewish Federation can and must always be a resource as the central community convener. And we are part of a national system, Jewish Federations of North America, which provides additional resources as we connect with our Jewish communities around the world. To achieve our mission, it is imperative for all of us to understand the communities, the various communities which make up the Jewish community of today, with nuance. While previous studies have helped us gain useful insights, the community portrait that we have in front of us is the first to give us the full scope of our community's makeup in 2020. As you'll see, there is much for us to celebrate. The report shows us that our Jewish communities are thriving, charitable, and diverse. It also finds that for many, the approach to what we see as traditional Jewish practice is changing. Jews are finding new and creative ways to worship and to identify themselves, and the rate of synagogue memberships continues to decline. In the past 2 years, Jews across the world, as you've heard this morning and as you well know, have been targeted with an ugly resurgence of anti-Semitism. Our study shows that Jews here in our region have also felt and seen the effects in their neighborhoods and in their day-to-day lives. Much of Jewish hate stems from a belief that Jews are all white, extremely wealthy, and highly privileged. Not only are these stereotypes harmful and offensive, but as the community portrait shows, they are simply inaccurate. It is important for both the Jewish and the non-Jewish community to learn that this study is what it says it is, and that we all shall continue to speak out against anti-Semitic ideas, rhetoric, and stereotypes. However, what is most important for the Jewish Federation and all of our partner agencies, many of whom are represented here today, is that these results will empower our work and our communities. We now have the concrete data that will help us retool, rethink the way we allocate resources, the way we raise money, the way we grant, and the way we structure ourselves for the 2020 decade ahead of us, and given 21st century philanthropic trends. We will use the feedback to help us continue to build an inclusive model of Jewish community, one that embraces the growing number of interfaith families, proud interfaith families, and one that embraces the growing number of Jews of color. With this information, we are able to meet the needs and desires of our Jewish communities and better plan for the community of the future. I'd like to echo Steve Rosenberg in extending my deepest thanks to Adam and Sarah Laver, dear friends and partners in all of our work, and all the members of our lay and technical committees, the staff, and all of you who were here today who took the time to listen, and I know will be wonderful partners and ambassadors for us. I'm looking forward to continuing the work ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. There are a few people who know more about the culture of Jewish Philadelphia than New York Times bestselling author Jennifer Weiner. Jennifer's books often tell the story of Jewish women and families in Philadelphia and in the suburbs. This includes her famed novel, In Her Shoes, which was made into a feature film shot right here in Philadelphia, starring Toni Collette and Cameron Diaz as young Jewish Philadelphia protagonists. A lifelong Philadelphia resident, Jennifer has watched our local Jewish community evolve and change with the times. We are delighted to have Jennifer with us to share her views today.
I'm the comic relief. I am delighted to be here today as a representative of Jewish Philadelphia, but I was not actually lucky enough to grow up Jewish in Philadelphia. I grew up Jewish in a small town in Connecticut where in my high school class of 400 there were 9 Jewish kids, so not a big Jewish population. And if you were a Jewish kid in the 1970s in a small town like that, there were certain guaranteed rites of passage. You had your bris if you were a boy, you had a naming if you were a girl, you had your bar bat mitzvah, and usually at some point in between there was the day when some kid on the playground would accuse you of killing Jesus. I was in 2nd grade when I had that particular rite of passage. I angrily informed the little boy that I hadn't killed anyone, and I was only like 7, so I would have remembered. And he thought about it and said, well, it was probably your parents then. So, good times. So I left my small town. I went to college at a university that, until not all that long ago, had quotas for the number of Jews that it would take. I worked at a small newspaper in central Pennsylvania after graduation, then at a medium-sized paper in Lexington, Kentucky. In case any of you are wondering, there are Jews in Lexington, Kentucky. I dated them both. And then in 1994, I came here, the first place that I'd ever lived with a sizable Jewish population. I've been happy to live here and work here and give my heroines their happy endings in books set in Philadelphia. And I've been especially happy to raise my daughters in a place where there are lots of Jews, where they are not even the tiniest bit of being ashamed of who they are and what they believe. I saw this Jewish pride in action about 7 years ago when I took my daughter, who I am not allowed to name, when I took her to Disney World for her 5th birthday. So there are a couple things you need to know about Disney World. If you go in November, it is Christmas from top to bottom, from Main Street to Epcot. It is Christmas decorations. Minnie and Mickey are dressed up like Santa and Mrs. Claus, the whole thing. And if you are a female presenting young person at Disney World, they will call you princess. So there I am at the Bippity Boppity Boutique, where my 5-year-old, per her dearest birthday wish, is being very expensively transformed into Cinderella by her fairy godmother in training, when I hear the fairy godmother in training, who's doing her nails, say, "So, princess, have you finished making your list for Santa?" Immediately, I'm on high alert, wondering how my daughter is going to handle this. I watch as she considers. I notice her thinking it over. Then she says, "Actually, I do not make a list for Santa because I am a Jewish princess." True story. It was awesome. And in spite of all the progress, I know and she knows that anti-Semitism is real and that it's not going anywhere. But she also knows, and I know, that we have a community that supports us as Jews. And we saw this community in action in the wake of the Pittsburgh shootings when there was a vigil at our synagogue, Rodef Shalom. We arrived early, and we got, I swear, what were probably the last seats in a 1,000-person auditorium. Every seat was full. The aisles were full. The lobby was full. And they weren't just filled with Jews. I think that many members of Mother Bethel AME were there, along with their Reverend Mark Tyler. There were priests, there were imams. We saw people from every part of Philadelphia, every religion, every ethnicity, believers and non-believers standing together and saying that an attack on some of us is an attack on all of us. So things are not perfect for Jews, as you will hear from the study. There are more of us than ever. We are more racially diverse than ever, but there are still some of us living in poverty, and anti-Semitism is once more on the rise. But I believe that if we have the freedom to tell our stories, a generation whose members can proudly and unironically assert their Jewishness, princess or otherwise, and a community that will mourn with us and stand with us. The Jews of Philadelphia are going to be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. As I mentioned earlier, Sarah and Adam Laver, in their role as co-chairs and community leaders on our volunteer committee, have played an instrumental role in all aspects guiding our community portrait study. I'm happy to welcome Adam Laver to speak about the experience and what we can learn from the results.
Good morning. I have an amazing vantage point from here as I look out on Independence Mall and Independence Hall, listening to some of the speakers before us this morning. I can't help but recall that Sarah and I, within the last month, took our children to Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty to trace the footsteps of grandparents and great-grandparents who came to this country, came to Philadelphia, established Landsmannschaft and fraternal organizations, burial societies, societies to help fellow Jews in need. And here we are, not too many years later, continuing that very important tradition. It gives me the chills. Thank you all for joining us today. Over 2 years ago, we began the intensive process of preparing a comprehensive study of Jews and Jewish communities within the 5-county region. Sarah and I are proud that we can now present data and information that is a true reflection of our local Jewish population. This is the first time that a Jewish community has used address-based sampling, called ABS, in a Jewish community study. Many other peer Jewish federations are now poised to follow in our footsteps, so that we have accurate, up-to-date, reliable, state-of-the-art information, perhaps for the first time. We knew that past studies focused on Jewish Federation databases and synagogue membership rosters would not reveal the truth about the diversity of Jewish life in our region. We also knew that a more limited definition of what it is to actually be Jewish would leave too many community members out of the process. So, in January 2019, just a little over 1 year ago, we put a new, innovative, state-of-the-art survey into the field. We made sure that we were meeting people where they were with web and paper questionnaires as opposed to relying on landline phone numbers. That's where the technology was before. We hosted, in addition, over a dozen focus groups throughout the region to complement the survey data, and we ensured that our language and the questions asked in this survey were inclusive and comprehensive so that Jews of all backgrounds and religious levels would be inclined to participate. Sarah and I have been honored to chair a committee of dedicated lay leader volunteers, along with a stellar technical advisory committee of experts truly handpicked, recommended, and selected from around the world who have also volunteered their time. And behind the lay leadership team and the technical advisory committee, I have to say, it's been mentioned already, but our Jewish Federation professional staff is absolutely unbelievable. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Not only is it important for the Jewish Federation to have the best data available, but dozens of other Jewish organizations in our region are also relying on our study to shape their future agendas. Iris, how many times did you reach out to me? When is the data going to be available? And that was true for so many others. We are really excited along with you to delve into this. I can relate as well. As immediate past chair of Jewish Family and Children's Service of Greater Philadelphia, I know that this information can be life-changing. By gaining an understanding of the nuances of our communities, we will be able to tackle issues such as food insecurity, emergency services, educational needs in a much more informed manner. We can learn how Jewish connections to everything from synagogues to community centers, Andre, Amy, are changing, and how we can and should adapt. Quite simply, the information in this study can save lives. It can and will guide Jewish organizations to develop best practices and better allocate our too limited resources. And it can be a source of comfort for all Jews in our region, from interfaith couples to Jews of color, to know that they have been counted and will be represented. Susanna Lax-Adler has made that her pledge from the start. I've heard her say it so many times, and this study follows that commitment. I trust that you are all looking forward to delving into the results with WestStat. We will all be available today and in the months ahead to answer any and all questions. For now, Sarah and I want to extend our thanks to all of those who helped us to reach this milestone. We are proud of the work we have done to date. We are ready to roll up our sleeves now and continue the work of building strong, vibrant Jewish communities throughout the greater Philadelphia region. Thank you all.
Thank you, Adam, and thanks to all of our speakers who did a great job. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask that we clear the stage, and in 60 seconds, give us 60 seconds, we're going to get into why you all came here. Not that these people weren't great so far. Steiger, senior methodologist from WestStat, the research firm we partnered with on this project. Darby will present the key findings of this study. Please hold any questions until you have until the end of this presentation. I promise we'll get to all of them. Darby.
Hi everyone, I'm Darby Steiger from WestStat, and we had the pleasure of being the organization to conduct and analyze this fabulous study of the greater Philadelphia region, 5-county area. And as Steve and Susanna and Adam said, the purpose of the study was to provide an up-to-date picture of the size of the Jewish community in the 5-county area, how the population identifies as Jews, what is important to them, and the types of services they need. The hope is that this rich data set will be a resource for community planning and the allocation of resources over the years to come. So I'm going to walk you through the key highlights from the study, and more details can be found in our full written report, which will be released very soon. As I start, I want to thank the excellent Federation staff, along with their lay committee and technical advisory committee. We really could not have gotten to where we are today without their leadership, their sage wisdom, and their guidance. So thank you to each of them. And if you're in the room, thank you. So I want to start by briefly reviewing what we did and how we did it. You've heard a lot already this morning about address-based sampling, so now I'll explain it a little more to you. So for some context, until now, nearly all Jewish population studies have been using phone calling as a way to collect the data. And as you know, we are now living in a time when people are dropping their landlines, they are using call blocking devices, and generally they don't answer their phones. I don't remember the last time I answered my phone. So WestStat and the Jewish Federation both knew that a new methodology was needed to conduct this study. Philadelphia is the first Jewish community to use address-based sampling and an entirely self-administered survey instrument rather than the phone standard methodology. Since we used this methodology last year, Pew is now using it to update their 2013 national survey data, which WestStat is currently conducting for them, as is New York City, and Chicago is next up on the list. So to execute this design, what we did was we compiled 50 lists of likely Jewish households. We deduplicated them against each other, and then we drew a random sample of addresses across the 5-county area and deduplicated that against the 50 lists that we had. So this reflects greatly improved coverage over what was done in 2009, when the Jewish population study sampled landline telephone numbers and only included phone numbers with local Philadelphia area codes. So by sampling from a list of addresses rather than phone numbers, that allows us to include everyone, regardless of whether you have a landline and a local area code. So we mailed out the survey request to nearly 80,000 addresses. We got nearly 11,000 to complete the screener to determine if anyone Jewish lives there, and I'll describe in a moment what we mean by that. And we had 2,634 eligible respondents who were then directed to a web survey, and if they preferred not to answer it online, then we mailed them a paper copy of the questionnaire. We offered the survey in both English and Russian, and we received 2,119 completed questionnaires. The data were collected from late January until mid-July of last year. In addition to the survey, we conducted 17 focus groups across the area with different segments of the population, including groups in each county, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia, as well as groups with older adults, Orthodox, millennials, Israelis, Russians, children of Holocaust survivors, college students, and caregivers. And the purpose of the focus groups was to complement the survey data with people's own stories of Jewish engagement, their experiences with healthcare and social services, and their perspectives on anti-Semitism in Israel. So today, I'll primarily be talking about the survey results, but the focus group findings can be found in the full report. Okay, so here are the numbers, drum roll. I'm going to walk you through these carefully to make sure everybody understands what you're seeing here. So in the first column, we showed the count of Jewish households from the 2009 study, which was 116,700. So if we were to use the same definition of a Jewish household as was used in 2009, the population would have increased by 59% over the decade. However, with the standard definition excludes households in which someone was raised Jewish or had a Jewish parent and does not identify with any religion. And as we're gaining a better understanding of the fluid nature of religious identification, Jewish researchers are realizing that the standard definition that has been used may be too limiting. So instead, we're using what we call an inclusive definition. Thus, our population count stands at 194,200 households, Jewish households in the greater Philadelphia. And these are households that contain at least one Jewish adult. So this number may look very large to you, and let me explain. There's three main reasons that this change is so large from 2009. The first is some of this is due to true population growth across the region. Over this same time frame, the general population grew by 3.5%. So we don't know exactly what that same population growth is for the Jewish community, but it gives us a sense of the actual growth that happened over that decade. Second is, as I mentioned earlier, the improved coverage, because we started with a list of addresses rather than phone numbers, and we suspect that accounts for much of the change in these numbers. And then thirdly is the more inclusive definition of who is Jewish, as I just described, which we think accounts for about 5% of the change. So next, let's talk about the people living in Jewish households, which includes both Jews and non-Jews. There are a total of 445,800 people living in Jewish households, among whom 79% are Jewish and 21% are non-Jewish. There are 351,000 Jewish persons living in the greater Philadelphia area, including 308,700 Jewish adults and 42,500 children who are being raised Jewish. Now, given that there are 4.1 million people living in the 5-county area, Jews represent about 9% of the total population. And compared to other Jewish communities in the US, as you heard, Philadelphia now ranks as the 3rd largest Jewish community. However, I do put some caveats on that because many of the other communities' data are out of date, some as many as 10 years old, and they reflect older methodologies. And as we've seen from this data, when you change the methodology, the count becomes much more accurate. So we expect that might change as other communities start to update their data. So now let's look at the data by county. So the dark blue bars that you see here reflect the number of Jewish households. The red bars reflect the number of Jewish persons in those households. And the light blue bars are the number of people in those Jewish households. So the largest number of Jewish households and Jewish persons are, not surprisingly, in Philadelphia County, representing half of all Jewish households in the 5-county area. And the fewest numbers of Jewish households and Jewish persons are in Chester and Delaware counties, and they're almost equal in size, the two of them. Next, we show some trending data, looking back over the 4 sets of Philadelphia Jewish population data from 1984, shown in blue, 1997, shown in red, 2009, shown in light blue, and 2019 in yellow. And the first set of bars before the dotted line show the totals for the greater Philadelphia area at each of these points in time, and then we break out the data by each county. So population changes are seen in all 5 counties in 2019, but as you can see here, especially in Philadelphia County since the 2009 study, and again, we think a lot of that is due to coverage because the people in 2009 who didn't have landlines or local area codes were more likely to be young urban dwellers. So we looked at many demographic characteristics of Jews in the greater Philadelphia area, which are covered in the report. But one interesting demographic that you've heard already mentioned this morning is the number of Jews of color in the 5-county area. We defined a Jew of color as someone who identifies as Hispanic or as Black, Asian, or some other non-white race. So these may be people who converted to Judaism, they may be second-generation intermarriage, or they may be people who are themselves, let's say, Argentinian or Ethiopian or Spanish, etc. So 10% of Jews in the Philadelphia area are Jews of color, and this compares to 5% that you measured in 2009. And notably, 1 in 5 Jews in Delaware County and 1 in 7 in Philadelphia County are Jews of color. So there's many ways now that we can dive deeper into understanding this population. For example, Jews of color are 3 to 4 times more likely to be living in poverty than those who are not Jews of color. It'll be important for Federation and Jewish communal organizations to learn more about this population and their needs. Okay, this slide shows you poverty rates across the greater Philadelphia area, and there's a lot going on in the slide, so let me take you through it. The dark blue bars show the percentage of Jewish households living at or below 100% of the federal poverty line, which is 6% for the whole region. 6% here. And the dotted line shows the comparable statistic for the general population in the 5-county area, which is 13%. So 13% overall, 6% among Jewish households are living in poverty. The red bar shows the percent at or below 138%, which is the cutoff for receiving SNAP or food stamp benefits, which is 10% overall for the county. So 10% are living at that SNAP threshold. And then the light blue bar shows those living in near poverty, and there's many ways to define near poverty, but for the purposes of this study, we defined it at 200% or less of the poverty index, and we see that 15% of households are living in near poverty. Keep in mind these definitions are cumulative, so the third bar includes the first and the second bars. We also found that 5% of seniors are living in poverty, 10% of families with children are living in poverty, and 22% of the Russian and former Soviet Union community is living in poverty. Delaware County, as you can see here, has the highest rates of households living in poverty. And then not shown on this slide are that 15% of Jewish households are receiving some kind of public benefit. Among those who are living in poverty, 58% are receiving a public benefit, which suggests there may be much room for Jewish communal organizations to help fill that gap. And then among those who are SNAP eligible, only 43% report receiving SNAP benefits, which also suggests an unmet need. Now let's shift gears and talk about the Jewish identity of Jews living in Greater Philadelphia. We asked respondents if they consider themselves Jewish by religion, by ethnicity or heritage, by culture, or if they have a Jewish parent or were raised Jewish but do not identify in any other way. So 66% of Jewish adults identify as Jewish by religion. An additional 30% identify as Jewish through ethnicity or culture but not through religion. And then 4% were raised Jewish or born to Jewish parents but do not identify religiously, culturally, or ethnically. And then older Jewish adults are significantly more likely at 79% to identify as Jewish by religion than our younger adults at roughly half. Another way to understand the Jewish community is to look at denominational identification. So this slide shows denomination trends over the 4 waves of surveys since 1984. You can see on the left that the proportion of households that identify as Orthodox has hovered between 5 and 12% over the past 35 years and is now at 8%. The conservative denomination has been on a steady decline, which is consistent with national trends. And aside from a blip in the 2009 data, the reform movement in Philadelphia has stayed essentially flat. The big shift that we're seeing here is that Jews who do not identify with any denomination have increased more than threefold since 2009. A few additional highlights not shown on this slide. Reform and conservative affiliation is strongest among those 65 and up, whereas Orthodox affiliation is more common among younger adults. And nearly 6 in 10, 58% of adults under the age of 40 do not identify with a denomination. So these are very consistent with national trends that we're seeing. Now looking at synagogue membership, 24% of Jewish households belong to a synagogue, either by paying dues or not, and 61% have no connection at all to a synagogue. Synagogue membership, again now at 24%, has declined from 35% in 2009 and 36% in '97. Synagogue membership is most common among Orthodox, conservative, and Reconstructionist households at about 50%, and more common with older adults and higher income households. And here are the interfaith marriage rates in Greater Philadelphia. 47% of marriages in Jewish households are interfaith. By way of comparison, Pew in 2013 reported 44% nationally. Rates are much higher amongst 18 to 64-year-olds, as you can see here, than among those ages 65 plus. Now, in 2009, the rate was found to be 28%, but that was known to be an underestimate. And interfaith households consistently report lower participation rates in Jewish activities than other households. But for many activities, they report 45% or higher participation, in particular morning rituals like sitting Shiva, lighting Hanukkah candles, and attending a Passover Seder. Next, we'll look at children in Jewish households. There are a total of 76,100 children living in Jewish households in Greater Philadelphia, but not all of them are being raised Jewish. We estimate that 56% of them are being raised either entirely or partially Jewish. So in households where both parents are Jewish, 68% of them are raising their children Jewish. Single parents are raising 46% of their children Jewish, and interfaith parents are raising 28% of their children Jewish. Some additional statistics on children that are not shown on this slide. 6% of Jewish households are sending their school-aged children to Jewish day schools. And less than 10% of Jewish families used Jewish day camps or overnight camps in the past year. Okay, moving on to health. More than half, 55% of Jewish households have someone in their household who's been diagnosed with a physical health condition. And this includes 75% of those who are living in poverty. Prevalence of specific health conditions is similar to the SEPA data, the 2018 Southeastern Pennsylvania Household Health Survey, where we were able to obtain that data. And then not shown here, 41% of Jewish households have someone currently in treatment for a physical health condition. We also asked about mental health and developmental and behavioral health conditions. 40% of Jewish households have someone who's been diagnosed with one of these conditions, which is similar to the SEPA findings from 2018. And this includes 61% of those who are living in poverty. Younger adults age 18 to 39 are more likely to report one of these conditions than our older adults. We asked about opioid addictions. We found only 2% are reporting opioid addiction. We don't have a perfect comparison point for that, but nationally, 6.5% have used opioids in the last 30 days. A few other health statistics not shown here. 11% of Greater Philadelphia Jewish households are uninsured, including 14% of those living in or near poverty. 19% skipped a health visit or a procedure due to cost, including 43% of those living in or near poverty. All right, now we'll shift gears and talk about charitable giving. We know from national data that charitable giving has been declining in the last few years, and the same can be seen in the Greater Philadelphia area. In 2019, 79% gave to some type of charity, which is down from 88% in 2009. Among the 79% who gave, 8% gave to only Jewish causes, an additional 29% gave to both Jewish and non-Jewish causes. And this is significantly down from 2009, when 58% said they gave a donation to a Jewish cause in the past 12 months. So both charitable giving and Jewish charitable giving seem to be declining in the 5-county area. As we see with national trends, older adults are more likely to have made charitable donations and Jewish donations in the past year than younger adults. Okay, anti-Semitism. We know that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and just for contextual understanding, the Tree of Life shooting took place in October of 2018, just a few months before we went into the field with this study, and the Poway shooting took place while we were in the field with this study. We asked respondents how much anti-Semitism there is in the greater Philadelphia area and also in their local area. 40% say they think there is a moderate or a great deal of anti-Semitism in the five-county area, and then just 19% say the same about their local area. Those ages 65 or older are more likely to report perceiving a great deal or moderate amount of anti-Semitism in the area than those under 65. And then 74% say they have heard a specific anti-Semitic or anti-Israel comment in the past year, and that doesn't necessarily mean in this area. It could have been on social media or online or in the news or something like that. But these included comments about Jews having too much power, that the Holocaust is a myth or is exaggerated, or that BDS is appropriate. And in the focus groups, we heard many examples of people being aware of specific incidents that have happened in the greater Philadelphia area, both in the news and to themselves or their family members personally. And as a result, many people in the focus groups are reporting increased levels of security in their synagogues and at Jewish buildings that they frequent. And finally, we asked a number of questions about Israel. In this one, we asked about attitudes towards a two-state solution, and you can see the way we worded the question here. Overall, 40% favor and only 16% oppose a two-state solution. Among those who favor, they're equally split between strongly favoring and somewhat favoring. But among those who oppose, they're more likely to strongly oppose than somewhat oppose. And then almost half either neither favor or oppose or didn't express an opinion on this. And supporters outnumber opposition by more than 3 to 1 among 18 to 39-year-olds, and by more than 2 to 1 for those ages 40 and up. A few other statistics about Israel. 37% have visited Israel at some point in their lifetime, again, higher among older adults than younger adults. And 66% say it's important to care about Israel, but again, much higher for older adults than for younger adults. So there are many more findings covered in the full report, and we look forward to the whole community diving into this data and finding impactful ways to leverage it to support the needs of the community. And now we look forward to hearing your questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorby. As Dorby said, we're going to answer questions in a minute. If you have a question, ask that you raise your hand. There's people in the back with microphones. They'll bring you the mic. Wait for the mic. But before I forget, on your way out, you're going to get a flash drive that has all of the slides and other information, so make sure you pick it up. And also, please visit jewishphilly.org/community-portrait. It has even more information, jewishphilly.org/community-portrait. So, anybody have any questions? Amy? Well, wait for the mic.
My question is about the detail from Lake County data specifically. So knowing that Montgomery County really has a mainline corridor and like an Elkins Park corridor, how detailed would we be able to get and study data like that?
So in addition to breaking the data down by county, we've also broken it down by Kahila. So you will be able to see those breakouts by Kahila once the data is released.
It's a good question. Way to start us off, Amy.
Similar question. Will zip code data be available?
Zip code data will be on the file, but you have to be really careful in analyzing at that level. If there's only a few people living in the zip code, then it's not going to be particularly reliable. So that'll be up to Federation to figure out how deep you can go with the data.
Other question?
Will the data for college students, is that data set be available to tease out from the rest of the data?
Yes, there's a whole chapter in the report about college students. Interestingly, we found that about 8% of Greater Philadelphians are college students. Many of them are not what we think of as college students, as like living on campus and in the dorms, but are part-time students or living at home. So it may not be exactly what you're looking for, but yes, there will be a whole section in the report on college students.
Anybody else? Iris? Wait for the mic.
Can you just talk a little bit about the focus groups and how deep the conversation or the statistics are relating to the focus groups?
Sure. So there were 17 focus groups, as I said. Federation staff conducted most of them. I conducted a few of them myself. People were asked pretty much the same questions across all the focus groups, so we were able to look across different populations to try to understand how people are feeling about different issues. And you'll see when the full report comes out that it is rich with quotes from those different focus groups and attributing them to who said what. So it pretty much paralleled the topics that we covered today. So you'll see the quantitative data, and then you'll see it followed up with rich data from those focus groups.
Just so you know, we did do an Israeli focus group, we did a Russian focus group, we did community focus groups, so there's a lot of good information.
I think I saw that one of your slides indicated that among younger Jewish adults in this area, there was about 2/3 that are not affiliated with synagogues or not members of synagogues, if I remember correctly. Were you able to tease out any information from that group as to their willingness to become members or aversion to the same?
Yes, we did ask, and I don't have the data committed to memory right now, but I could look it up later. We did ask people why they are not members of synagogues, if it's because it's too expensive or they're not interested. And I think there were probably about 12 to 15 different reasons on the list, so we could tease that out for young people. I just don't have that data right now.
Hi. I was curious for a little bit more granular detail about the shift to become the third largest Jewish population in the country. So where was Philadelphia before? I know you said it's a little bit apples and oranges with the methodology from the other cities, but I was curious what those other cities are and kind of how the ranks have changed.
I don't know offhand what they were in 2009. Oh, number 6 last time. Okay, and now number 3. Number 1 is New York, number 2 is LA. LA is going to be doing their update later this year. It's possible their numbers will be much higher. I think they're around 500,000. Chicago, which is about to go out in April, is number 6 this time. But again, we'll see what it looks like. So I feel like it's a very shifting ranking at this point. So enjoy number 3. It may not last.
New York is also about to do their study too, so.
Right. I expect they may still be number 1.
Can't thank you enough. It's so timely to have this report. So for the visionaries who created it, thank you, and for releasing it today, thank you. I'm wondering about the language of the unaffiliated being, using the word secular is one of the things I'm wondering about. We have all these names for identifying Jewish people, and then we have a whole group of people that are not identified. And I think if we gave them a language to feel a part of, I think it's a way to include. So it's just one of my questions, and have you heard the word secular used, secular humanist? It was a phenomena that was used a long time ago, more under Workman's Circle, and it was a large group of Jewish people who affiliated differently. And I'm wondering where we are with that. And thank you.
So I'll just say 2 things, and then maybe you can comment. One is when we asked the denomination question, secular humanist was one of the options. So that got rolled into the other category, which I think we showed on the screen. But I think the bigger issue here is that people don't affiliate, right? They don't label themselves. They don't have those connections that we traditionally think about. So what kind of label you put on them, I don't know, but it's not secular humanist because they're not calling themselves that.
Affiliate and affiniate.
Affiniate.
Thank you.
Good question. Jennifer?
Are there any type of long-term outlooks within the study based on the trends of the past 10, 20 years?
Well, we're not able to project out from what we've collected today, but I think what we're seeing nationally with other studies and research that's being done is that the trends that we're seeing are likely to continue with more interfaith marriages, fewer people joining synagogues, fewer people affiliating or affiliating, as you'll have it. And I would also say likely to happen farther down the road is even more Jews of color, that we need to understand that community and what their needs are.
Anybody else?
Sorry, just you make me think, which is wonderful, thank you. When I'm thinking about the LGBTQ, I think, community, excuse me? But if I could say it correctly, I'm really thinking about that whole community and where they are in this research, one, and two, as an organization, will there be conversations that we can have either with researchers or with other people in the community to tease out how we can serve our community better? So we can meet our mission and we can meet the larger mission of the Jewish community.
So I'll answer the first one, you answer the second one. So for the first one, we did measure gender identity and sexual orientation. So that data is in the file, as well as breaking it out by college students, all different cuts that you want to do on that.
Yeah, and the whole purpose is for planning purposes over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. This room is filled with our agency partners, our board of directors, board of trustees. We have a number of committees that will all be taking very deep dives into all of this. And we didn't do this just so we could count and understand where everybody is. It really is all for planning, so we know where everybody is and we can affect and help the most people at the most time.
I'm wondering if you have any information about teenagers, if there was anything that we could tease out about teenage population.
Yes, so we can break out households with teenagers. And in the data set that Federation will be receiving, there's a particular variable so that you can specifically call out household with teenagers. But I don't know that I can answer specifically right now. So if you want to ask me afterwards, I can see what we've got in the data.
John?
Any feel or how much of the increase is due to the change in methodology versus due to organic growth?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, well, we don't have exact numbers on that, but we suspect that most of the growth is because of that change in methodology. We estimate that about 5% of it is because of the expanded definition of who's Jewish that we used. And it's hard to say what's true population growth, but as I said, 3.5% was the general population growth over that time period. Could be around 3.5%, could be a little more, could be a little less, not really sure. But we think the bulk of it is because of the improved coverage.
And we did have a very good group of technical advisors from all over the world, and they completely concur with those findings. Yoni?
So can you elaborate more about the component of the Jewish identity? Did you check what strength the Jewish identity of the unaffiliated, those are not part of something?
So they tend to not be as involved in aspects of Jewish life, but they are involved. They are doing things. They're attending Passover Seders. They're lighting Hanukkah candles. They are celebrating Jewish holidays, but they're not doing these traditional things that the more affiliated community is doing, like going to services and so on. And in the report, we can break down what's important to them. The people who are not affiliated, do they care about leading an ethical and moral life? The answer is yes. Do they care about remembering the Holocaust? The answer is yes. They share many of the same values as those who are more fully immersed in Jewish life.
We have time for one or two more. Iris?
Was any question related to, for young people, to birthright, or if they've been on a birthright trip, or did it, because I'm a little perplexed.
I don't think we asked specifically about birthright, but what we could do is cut it down for the 18 to 24-year-olds, let's say, and see who has had visits to Israel. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for being here. Remember to take your flash drive on the way out. I want to give you one other date on March 12th at our offices at 2100 Art Street in the Jewish Community Services Building, both at 8:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. We will have our first two town hall meetings where we will be taking much deeper dives into this data. So we offer two different times. They're both the same meeting, so you don't have to come to both. You can if you want to, if you're really that into it. 8:30 a.m., 5:30 p.m., and then there'll be a series of other meetings after that, really through June, where we will be in your communities, in synagogues, in agencies, taking deeper dives specifically for Bucks County, for Chester County, for Delaware County. There's a lot of different reports that we have. The data is very rich. We had a great partner in West Stat. Our staff, led by Francine Axler, Lindsay Weicker, and Jess Ramweiler, and Kelly Romorowski, while she was here, did a really incredible job. So we are anxious to get into this data and find more and more for our agency partners and for ourselves, so we can really be very planful over the course of the next 5 years. So thank you all for being here.